From Louisa May Alcott, we've gained the proposal that life, to some extent, is something shared. And one good reason for that is humans are vulnerable. We're not able, at times, to pursue our life goals. We are in relationships of dependence with others, and sometimes we are responsible for others. By and large, humans are enmeshed in relationships, and no account of human life would be complete if we didn't consider the importance of human relationships. Louisa May Alcott has given us support for a second candidate for the good life, what we'll call moral life, the human life committed to self-conduct as a person and to some or all areas of belonging, such as family, home, work, town, nation. Pope St. John collaborates with this proposal in Peace on Earth. Pope St. John, in parts 2 and 3, insists on the priority of individual persons. All humans have a natural dignity based on our two powers, the power of the intellect and the power of the will. And at the same time, Pope St. John follows Aristotle in asserting on page 9, men are by nature social. In other words, we all have a natural right to belong to others, to meet and associate and live together. For Pope St. John, the common good springs from our social nature. Let's now talk about what the common good is and consider its importance for the good life. In Peace on Earth, Pope St. John provides some useful synonyms for the common good. On page 23, he refers to it also as the general welfare and the common welfare. And on page 54, quote, the good of the whole human family. We've mentioned that the common good springs from our social nature. And I'd like to now provide a long definition of what the common good is. The common good is the attainment of everyone's shared rights and duties. And moreover, according to Pope St. John, the common good is conducted by government. In our definition there, I refer to common good as an attainment. In other words, it's something that has to be pursued. The common good at times is failing, at other times it's improving. So the common good, for anyone thinking like Pope St. John, is like a goal. It's something that we have to pursue for it to flourish. A short definition of the common good. It is the happiness of the whole community. It is the good life of the whole community. In part 2, Pope St. John notes some features of the common good. This is a useful way of understanding what the common good is. First, it is populated by individual persons. According to Pope St. John, all humans have natural dignity. All humans have personhood based on their intellect and in their will. And moreover, we know that all humans are also bound in various forms of reciprocity. We live in families and groups of various kinds. So families and groups populate the common good. And Pope St. John observes something important to us today, that the common good is composed of diverse peoples or diverse ethnicities. So we shouldn't think of the common good as something homogeneous or homogeneous through and through. There's a great deal of complexity and diversity among the peoples. And we could add something we know today that the common good consists of like institutions and corporations and businesses, very complicated kinds of groups. When we think of the common good, we often think of like material resources. The common good is like our natural resources and our energy supply and transportation. Those are all material things, says Pope St. John, and very important for our rights and duties. However, Pope St. John also insists that there's a spiritual side of the common good. In other words, non-material things like culture and education and faith are part of the common good. And importantly, in part 2, Pope St. John gives argument that the common good must be conducted, and government is the conductor of the common good. Let's read a quote about the relationship between government and the common good by Pope St. John. This is on page 23. The attainment of the common good is the sole reason for the existence of civil authorities. And by civil authorities, we mean officials and agencies and policies and laws. And we also ought to remember that there are multiple levels of government. There's the town government, state government, federal government, and international government. In part 2 and also in part 3, Pope St. John gives argument that today there is a global common good. We may assume that approximately each nation has its own common good. However, just like individuals form reciprocal relations in life, so too entire nations form reciprocal relations. That's true today, says Pope St. John in Peace on Earth, that all nations are involved with each other. And so, in short, for Pope St. John, there's a global common good today. And for Pope St. John, that's a positive development, a promising development of the common good. In part 2, Pope St. John gives arguments that a government is needed. I want to mention one important reason why a government is needed for Pope St. John. Many of us as persons and as families are at times unaware of certain rights that we have that we ought to pursue. So the government at times is needed to help people become aware of rights that they might form. For example, the right to suitable employment or the right to an education. In the same way, some of us at times in life are incapacitated to dutifully pursue our rights. We know we have a right, and yet we're unable to perform our duty. Well, that's the job of the government, says Pope St. John. For people who are incapacitated, the government will facilitate the dutiful pursuit of our rights. In part 2, Pope St. John asserts that the natural dignity of each individual person must be respected by the government. That's important. Pope St. John isn't arguing that all of us ought to 100% belong to the common good, or that human life is 100% shared. It's an inescapable fact of our human existence and human life that each of us is a person, and it's important that we choose what we belong to, and it's important that we choose our actions. And for Philosophy 225, an important conclusion that we draw from parts 1 and 2 is that all of us as persons and as lives are in some way bound to this global common good. And that's a great point of discussion to think about. In what ways in my life am I dependent upon the common good and a contributor to the common good, and moreover to the government which stewards the common good. For example, we might come up with some laws that are in a way laws of human life, laws about marriage, retirement, births and marriages. Those are ways in which government is an authority in human life.